Alrighty, folks. I reckon we are about to begin. The recording has started, and I'm going to get the ball rolling. So, first and foremost, as always, I would like to introduce myself real briefly. My name is Christian Villegas. I work with TILBM as one of their program directors, and our goal is primarily to help serve different student communities. That could be bringing in very seasoned guest speakers, such as Mr. West, to hosting diverse workshops and one-on-one sessions that tackle topics such as personal finance, project management, and other really useful skills that you can take in academics, as well as the workforce and your personal hobbies. Again, and something else that we always try to do is really just stress how much we appreciate the teams that have allowed us to support the student communities. I want to thank Fort Worth ISD, Birdville ISD, Grapevine Colleyville ISD for being so kind to let us come out there virtually, sometimes in person, and be supportive. I also want to thank our partners at A&M, Commerce, Tarrant County College, TCU, and the other great universities and colleges that we've been allowed to work with, either through finding career mentors, guest speakers, or just sharing our resources with their student communities. Today, we're very fortunate. We have Mr. Chris West. His background is impeccable. His story is really exciting. And I would challenge you guys, similar to our previous guest speakers, to just soak in as much as you can. One thing I try to stress is every individual has wisdom in their own right. We've all lived our own unique experiences that give us insights that others who might be equally skilled or even better than us may not have earned. And that creates a unique avenue to learn a lot wherever you go. So try to keep that in mind as you hear Mr. West's story. And remember, there's some wisdom you might have that he may not have, that if you ask him a question during today's chat, it might spark a whole new chain of thought in yourself and your colleagues. So that's always invited. Now, having said that, I'm going to get straight to the bio. At that point, I'll let Mr. West take over. He's going to do a really cool presentation, and then from there we can phase into Q&As. Again, for those of you guys that are here virtually, not in a group setting, if you have questions, please do put them in the chat and we'll pass them along. All righty. So reading straight from the bio that we put together, I'm going to do that just that way everyone gets a shared idea of Mr. West. Chris West serves as the co-founder and director of government relations and grassroots outreach for Jackson West Consulting, which is a DC-based lobbying firm that advocates for constituents from the state of Virginia at the federal level. With decades of professional experience in government and public policy, West has found himself working in halls of the U.S. Senate and at the Virginia office of the Attorney General. Outside his entrepreneurialism at Jackson West Consulting, Chris is active with his local church, Rotary Club, and Masonic Lodge, and regularly supports youth through different volunteer opportunities, such as this one with TILBM. Chris has a BA in political science from Arizona State University, and I will let him take the helm and continue sharing his story.
Thanks, Christian, for the introduction. I assume everybody can hear me okay. Hopefully there won't be too much lag either in my video feed, but if there is, please do let me know and I can cut the video. We can just do the audio feed. As Christian shared, my name is Chris West. I am a partner and co-founder of a small lobbying firm, public affairs firm. We'll go over what both those two things mean. Based in Alexandria, Virginia. I live right here in Fort Worth, however, and really I've been a beneficiary of COVID, if you will, because it has allowed me to do a lot of my work now in this exact medium that we're in right now through Zoom, versus having to fly so much back and forth to DC, although I do fly back and forth to DC about 4 times each month. So with that, a little bit about my company. We are a bipartisan lobbying firm and public affairs firm, and again, I'll get into those two terms here a little bit later, but we do cover things on both the Republican side of the aisle as well as the Democratic side of the aisle. We also work at all 3 levels of government. So we work at the local level, the state level, and the federal level. At the local level, we essentially do controversial local land use projects. Again, I'll get into more details as what that means. At the state level, we do direct government lobbying, and at the federal level, we do federal issue advocacy, public affairs. Again, all terms I'll define a little bit later on, but I thought I would begin, if I have the ability to share my screen, to kind of give you a general idea of what I think I do, what my parents think I do, what society thinks I do, etc. So if I can do that here, if the host would give me screen sharing capability. Can everyone see my screen? Can someone say yes if they can? Or if you can't?
No.
Let me see here. There we go. Now can everyone see my screen? All right, thumbs up. So as a lobbyist, you'll see in this little graphic here, my friends think that I basically go to these fancy dinners all the time. My parents think that I'm in the Oval Office each day meeting with the President of the United States. Folks, my opponents, I should say, or the folks that I'm lobbying against, think that I'm out clubbing seals with a baseball bat on a regular basis. Society thinks that a lobbyist just walks around with loads of money and cash in their hand and pays off politicians. I think, I've got this prestigious job where I get to go to Capitol Hill all the time. And in actuality, what I really do is I sit and listen in the back of rooms in committee meetings pretty much all day, every day. So it's not nearly an exciting life at all. I'll share a similar graphic too for a lobbyist. Again, what society thinks I do is simply burn cash, right, while smoking cigars. My parents think I'm out doing these important meetings and making these big business deals. Politicians think I'm just out there to give them money. My clients think I'm out playing golf all the time. I think I'm George Washington, right, giving an address to the Continental Congress. But in reality, what I really do is like Atlas there, if you will, push major rocks up very steep hills. I'll share one more, again, graphic with you. Because I'll talk a little bit about how I sort of got to where I am today, and that is as a political operative. So again, what society thinks I do, they have this vision of what political operatives do through TV shows like The West Wing. My parents think I'm out putting yard signs, and we have a midterm election this year. You guys probably see all the big 4x8 signs and yard signs going out ahead of the election coming up the second Tuesday of the month. In November. Other campaigns, right? The opponents think I'm putting a gun to the head of dogs, which is awful. Volunteers think that I'm like a mob boss. I think I'm one of the 300. But what I actually do in that capacity, what I actually would do is just basically spend all day on a phone, out calling volunteers, calling voters, calling donors, etc., on behalf of the candidate. So. Again, just kind of a funny way to sort of introduce you into what it is that I do or have done here recently. So with that, what I'm going to get into here and basically share with you guys is how I, for the most part, got to where I am. And I'll go back to really my time for the most part in high school. I grew up in Winchester, Virginia. It's about an hour and a half outside of Washington, D.C. I was not the best high school student. I went to a high school, my particular class had 180 students. I finished 90th in my class. So I was the very definition of what a mediocre student was. I was good enough to not be bad, but bad enough to not also be good. During high school, from a career standpoint, given a lot of this talk is about a career, about my career path, I started maybe like many of you do. My first job was out there mowing lawns. We actually get snow in Virginia, unlike here in Texas, there isn't much snow. But shoveling driveways for folks when we did get snow, etc. When I turned about 15, that was when I was able to go and get my first job. I got my first job at J.C. Penney. I was working in this department called the catalog department, which for all of you probably sitting in that room, you might have no idea what a catalog is, but imagine if Amazon was actually in a printed form, and imagine how thick that book would be. That is what the catalog was at JCPenney. It was like a 6-inch thick book for the most part. You could order virtually anything that you wanted. After high school, I went off to college. I went to George Mason University, which is only about an hour from my house. I attended George Mason just my freshman year. And really, sort of the issue that I had is I found that my first year of college, being still so close to my home, that it was more like a 5th year of high school than it was a first year of college. So I felt that I was almost too close to home, and I wanted to go away a little bit further from my home to school. So what I did is I transferred my sophomore year, and I transferred my sophomore year to a junior college all the way out in the state of Arizona. So I went clear across the country. So when I say I wanted to get away from my hometown and be further away from my parents and my family, I went clear across the country to do so. And it was really one of the best moves that I made. That first year that I was out there, I matured quite a bit. I got a job working in a Ford dealership. I was basically detailing cars after school, after classes. And it was also at that point that I really sort of narrowed down what it was that I wanted to do for a living. So in Arizona, I see one question that was asked. I went to transfer to Pima Junior College, which is located in Tucson, for my freshman year. I'm sorry, for my sophomore year. And as I mentioned, I started working at a dealership, a Ford dealership, detailing cars. I got that job through a friend of a friend, really, a friend of my brother, actually, who knew the manager at that particular dealership. Repeat the college name. Pima, P-I-M-A, Junior College. And again, it's located in Tucson. I love being, like I said, further away from home. As I mentioned, I was not the best student in high school, but my sophomore year of college, I made straight A's, which for me was absolutely unheard of, and quite the achievement. It was also, at this particular point in life where I began to sort of narrow down what it was that I wanted to do in life. And I had always been interested in high school. My favorite subject was history, and I'd always been interested in high school, in history, and really sort of in politics as well. And I'll share, really the political part. What interested me was in middle school and in high school, I played sports. I played baseball, played basketball, played football. And one year on a baseball team that I was playing on, there was an all-star team, right? All the best kids get sort of selected for an all-star team to represent our small city and go play sort of around the state and then go play nationally. You all probably see the National Little League World Series on TV once a year. You'll see it on ESPN. So there was a kid that made that particular team that was actually one of the worst players in all our league. And I did not understand how this particular kid had made this all-star team, given how poorly he played all season long. And actually in every season prior to that, growing up as a kid, he was always one of the worst players in the league. Well, his father was mayor of our town. So that was sort of, in a sense, my first brush with politics. It was frustrating to me that spot was taken by someone who wasn't necessarily very talented or very skilled, but it was more based off of who, in this particular instance, their father was, or who their parents were. And I didn't like that. And that sort of motivated me and really sort of interested me to understand, A, how something like that could occur, and B, how to maybe undo things like that in the future. And that was, again, sort of my first brush with politics. And that's really what sparked my interest in going into this particular field. After my sophomore year, I transferred to Arizona State University, ended up graduating from there. I worked in the emergency room at St. Joseph's Hospital as an x-ray assistant, one of the coolest jobs that I ever had. I basically helped x-ray techs take x-rays of people that came in through the emergency room, most of the time with a gunshot wound, a stab wound, something of a again, life-threatening sort of emergency. I actually had to hold those people a lot of times unconscious. I had to hold them in certain positions to allow a particular x-ray to be taken so they could either identify, what organs maybe the knife had cut internally, or maybe where the bullet fragments were within the person's body. So again, that was just a really, really, really cool job for me. I regressed though my junior and senior year as a student, and I'll make a greater point about this towards the end of my presentation. But ultimately, my senior year of college, I had 2 summer school classes that I had to take to graduate. And I had to get an A in both of those classes just to have a greater than 2.0 GPA so that I could graduate. I ended up getting an A in both those classes and ended up graduating with a 2.212 GPA from Arizona State University. Something certainly not to brag about. But again, I'll get back to the point here shortly as to why I think that's important now, given where I am in life. After college, I moved back home to my hometown. I was offered a job working in my father's brake factory. My father, growing up, worked in a brake factory for 45 years. My mother worked as a manager of a doctor's office for 47 years. And my other job offer was working in the circuit court clerk's office as a deputy clerk, which was a job that also sort of had a political element to it, given that that was a position that was elected or is elected in the state of Virginia. I had a friend from high school that actually had been working there, and he was taking off to leave to get his MBA, and asked me if I was interested in having his job, his old job, and I took that opportunity. While I was working as a deputy clerk in the circuit court there in my hometown, I spent my afternoons and evenings working on local political campaigns. So I started working on local city council races, board of supervisor races, commissioner races, constitutional officer races, etc. I was then, through a contact I had made while working in the circuit court, offered a job in the Virginia Attorney General's office. The Attorney General at that time in Virginia was going to be running for governor in a couple of years. So I took that opportunity to move away from my hometown and go to the capital of Virginia, which is Richmond, and work in the Virginia Attorney General's office. I then left the Attorney General's office and worked on the Attorney General's race, then the Lieutenant Governor's race, and the Governor's race, and then on a unified ticket. And ultimately, the following year, I got offered a job to work on Bush Cheney in the state of Florida. So again, if you remember, and this might be very early on, you guys are probably in, gosh, you guys probably weren't even born yet, but Florida was an important swing state, an important state back in the 2000 election, and I was asked to go work there in 2004. It was, again, a friend of mine that I had met who offered me that job back when I was doing some of the local races in my hometown. From that job, I then went to work in the United States Senate for U.S. Senator George Allen. He had been a 2-term senator in the state of Virginia. I worked as a legislative assistant in his office, covering transportation and technology issues. So that was really my first sort of soiree into Washington, D.C., and being able to work on Capitol Hill and sort of understand more directly how our government works. Now, my particular senator was wildly popular, and I thought that I would basically have a career with this particular member of Congress for basically as long as I wanted. Unfortunately, however, he was up for election in 2006, re-election, I should say, in 2006. Now, in 2006, I should say in 2005, YouTube was basically created. So you all are all familiar with YouTube and probably know a life without having YouTube. We didn't know what YouTube was back in 2005 and 2006. This was an entirely new technology. We had no idea people could take videos and share them, etc. My boss at the time was out on the campaign trail and basically had said something to an individual who was tracking him, basically recording him, not with a cell phone, with an actual camera back in those days. That ultimately was recorded and posted to YouTube and got blasted around the nation. And again, the word viral was only a word when you talked about maybe in biology, right? With disease, this was totally a new phenomenon. YouTube back in that day went viral, however, and ultimately ended up costing my boss his reelection. And again, this was the first of its kind, and really kind of put YouTube on the map, but certainly from a political standpoint, election standpoint, made YouTube just an absolutely huge tool that would be used going forward and by all campaigns. I didn't know what to do after my boss had left. A constituent that I had helped on some issues with his business approached me and talked to me about potentially opening up my own business, and something I had never thought about doing myself. But he helped me get my first contract, which was with a large nonprofit health system in the state of Virginia. And sort of the rest is history, if you will. 15 years later, I'm still working for that same firm, and thankfully have grown the firm exponentially over that period of time. So again, what we do are three different levels. We do local, state, and federal government relations. And as I mentioned, at the local level, we do controversial local land use projects. So if you think of something as simple as a cell tower, people love cell towers in that you get 5G and you get full bars on your cell phone, but nobody wants the cell tower in their backyard, right? If I came to you and said, hey, I'm going to put this cell tower in your backyard, you're going to ask me, well, gosh, is this going to cause cancer? It's going to ruin my backyard. It's going to ruin my view, maybe of if you live, outside the city, maybe your view of the mountains or view of a lake or what have you. So those are typically controversial to get approved. Large residential developments, you're talking 10, 15, 20, 30,000 homes. A lot of folks oppose those. Anything that's going to get folks at the local level out in opposition to a particular project, I'm hired to sort of come in and help market that project so that it's more palatable to both the local community, but also that we're offering enough to mitigate maybe some of the things that we're doing for impacting roads, we're impacting schools, right? We're putting more students in schools, which are making your classrooms larger. All those things we work to negotiate with local commissioners or judges or city councils, et cetera, to help to get those ultimately approved. I also do direct state government lobbying in 6 different states, mainly on the East Coast. In those states, we are hired by entities to focus on legislative priorities that they may have, either a bill that they want to see get passed, or maybe a bill that they actually oppose, or legislation currently on the books that might be outdated that we want to update. I work on their behalf to fix those legislative and regulatory issues for them. At the federal level, I do public affairs, issue advocacy. So what I basically do is I find the winners or the losers on a particular piece of legislation that's proposed at the federal level. So I will go out into states, into pretty much any congressional district in the country, and find, again, people that stand to benefit from a particular bill getting passed, or maybe sometimes I'm actually out seeking and trying to find people that are opposed to a certain piece of legislation. And what I do is I encourage those folks to reach out to their congressman and voice how that particular piece of legislation might impact them, might impact their family, might impact their business, might impact their church or civic organizations, whatever it might be. I encourage them to get involved in the legislative process. So some of my clients at the federal level are like CBS, which you see pretty much on every corner, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, American Airlines, AT&T, Exxon, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We do Blue Cross Blue Shield, literally hundreds of others at the national level that we have worked for and been very blessed for. Again, just sort of swinging back, I mean, one of the things, a couple of things I want you guys to sort of take, from my career path, understanding that everyone's career path is going to be different. For me, one of the things, and if you go back and if you maybe listen to this again, which I doubt any of you will, one of the things I wanted to stress is, all of the jobs I got, none of them did I apply for. All of the jobs that I've had in my career, and there's probably over 10 in that list that I just gave you here fairly quickly, were all through friends or colleagues or friends of friends or family members or someone that I happen to know. It wasn't, an ad in a newspaper or an ad on a website that I applied for. And I want to stress the importance of just the relationships that you have. And again, just your friends and family, your teachers. If some of you have part-time jobs already or work after school, those are the folks that I think are really going to influence, or at least in my case, influenced my career path much greater than just, again, some sort of random job posting that I applied for with really no knowledge of how the job worked or who was in charge or any experience related to that particular position. Another thing I just wanted to stress was, as I shared with you guys, and it was actually, fairly embarrassing to do so, I was a horrible student. I was an absolutely awful student. And the fact that I am now where I am, owning a lobbying firm in DC, a very successful firm. I mean, if I can do it, it really truly is, each and every one of you can do it. I came from a nothing background. My parents were, we were basically lower middle class. I didn't have any advantages at all over anyone else. I basically just simply worked hard to sort of get, ultimately where I was. And again, folks say it all the time, if you dream something, or if you have a passion, if you have a desire, you can actually do it. And I'm certainly living proof of that. A couple quick lessons that I've learned, and then I'll get to the Q&A. Folks really focus on, especially, at this point, probably in your all's high school careers, of what do you want to do, right? What do you want to do when you get older? What do you want to do when you get older? That question is always worded in a way of what do you want to do? I would offer, approach that in a way. What do you don't want to do? What is not, something that you necessarily want to do versus what is something you want to do. The process of elimination is equally as important as the process of selection. Understand, what are you good at, and likewise, what are you not good at, right? I mean, I hated science, I hated math when I was in high school. I loved history, so that sort of, very early on, sort of steered me in the direction of history and political science and politics and government, etc. So, I could have ruled out any career in science. I wasn't going to become a doctor, wasn't going to become a nurse, I wasn't going to go in any sort of a scientific field, whatsoever. Likewise, math was difficult for me. I didn't want to do anything that involved crunching numbers. I wasn't going to be an accountant. I wasn't going to be a finance person, anything to that degree. Outside of just the topics of school, just think about, yourself or your own life experiences. Again, as I mentioned, my dad worked in a brake factory for 45 years. My mom worked in a doctor's office, the same doctor's office, for 47 years. They went to the same building every single day, parked in the same parking spot every single day, went to the same desk every single day. I didn't want a job like that. I needed something that was going to mix it up, that was going to be different. If not every day, at least every week, or maybe every month, or at least every couple of months. So again, that, seeing sort of their experience and understanding that that wasn't what I wanted, again, sort of steered me in a way towards a job like I have, that is constantly changing as far as the clients that I have and the issues and all that I work on. So again, understanding that you might want a different challenge, a different issue, a different problem, even a different atmosphere, right, will help also, select or deselect, the different career paths that you want to go through. So again, elimination is just as important as selection. And then lastly, I just say, assess yourself. What do you like? What are your hobbies, your interests? Do you want to work in a big office? Do you want to work for yourself? Do you want to work outside? Do you like traveling? Do you want to sit at a desk all day? Do you like working solo? Do you like working as a team? All of these are really simple questions that you do know the answer to right now, in sort of a self-assessment, and certainly things that you can apply that, again, will help you steer yourself into a particular field. I'll share, another sort of key, if you will, probably the biggest key to my personal success, is that I was not a yes man. And you always hear about a yes man, and people like surrounding themselves with other folks that sort of agree and think the way that they do. That was not me. I actually have sort of built my business off of being a no man. And what I mean by that is that I'm not afraid to deliver, bad news or hide bad news from clients, which a lot of folks in my particular industry are afraid if they share bad news. If they say, hey, look, we can't get this legislative priority passed, or we don't have the votes to get this done, they're afraid they're going to lose that client. I have no problem delivering that kind of bad news. And if anything, what that has taught me is that being honest and being upfront with my clients has actually garnered a lot more respect for me as a professional. And again, it is actually led me to either other clients or a lot of repeat business, because they know that I'm a straight shooter, that I'm going to be honest with them, and that I'm not afraid to give them bad news. So, a lot of times I go to, board meetings with clients, and I'll even have a lot of their internal employees come up to me before a board meeting and say, hey, will you please, say this or say that? I'm afraid to say it because I'm an internal employee, but you can say it because you're an outside consultant. And again, that kind of goes back to just being upfront and being honest with folks. So again, I would certainly encourage you throughout your career path, to not be afraid to deliver bad news, be it to a boss, be it to a customer, to a client, whatever it might be. Another piece of advice I'd have is to not be afraid to make a lateral move in your career if it better sets you up for long-term success. So, if you're going to get into a big company, let's say, a lot of times you can take a lateral move, which is what I mean by that is basically a very similar job or maybe the same job, but in a different department. Your career path is not going to be a straight line. It's most likely going to be a rather jagged line. For example, taking the same or similar position in another department, maybe you have a boss or superior that's relatively new to their position, thus unlikely to be moving up or moving on anytime soon. But the boss in another department is maybe about to be promoted, or maybe about to retire, or maybe moving over to another department themselves, which might give you an opportunity to move quicker up the chain yourself and to get a promotion yourself. A couple more points, I just say don't compare yourself to others. I mean, everybody is different. Just look around the room. Understand that, more often than not, job or career opportunities are going to find you. You aren't necessarily going to find them. And again, that goes back to, every opportunity that I had was presented to me from either a friend or a family member or a colleague. It wasn't like I was out actively seeking or trying to find those jobs, but those things sort of dropped in my lap. And really, you should sort of breathe a little bit easy, that in life, things like that and opportunities like that are going to happen. So there's not going to be so much pressure and so much stress on you and you alone to go out and find each and every opportunity that you're going to have in life. I would also say, just two more points. I mean, work ethic. Again, I was a horrible student. But what I would certainly encourage you guys to do is to find something that inspires, something that you want to give 110% towards. And once you can find that one thing, it's easy to make that applicable. It's easy to apply that then to other things. But I would encourage you to find out certainly now in some way, shape, or form, whether that's a sport, a hobby, a volunteer opportunity, maybe a particular class, et cetera. And lastly, I'd leave you with this, and you're going to become successful at some point in your life. And it certainly doesn't happen, right out of the gate. It certainly takes hard work. But I would certainly want to encourage each of you to remember to help those that are coming up behind you. What I have found in my experience is that there are really kind of two types of people out there in the world. There are people that never want to give up power, never want to give up that authority, never want to not be in charge. Really, that's 3/4 of Congress for you right there. And then there are those people who want to attain those top leadership roles, but then gladly, once they do, turn around and want to help teach or train the next person coming up behind them. Those are the people you want to hitch your horse to. Those are the folks you want to find and be around. Are those decision makers who, when the time is ready, will step aside, and maybe it's just one opportunity they give you a chance to lead the group or give you a chance to lead on a project. But again, it's those folks that are going to be more valuable to you going forward than getting behind someone or having a boss or having a mentor that, again, is never really giving you the opportunity to get your feet wet and you to have that experience ultimately yourself. So with that, I'll leave it open to Q&A. I know there's a couple of questions that were provided to me earlier, but if there's anything specifically now, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that story. So I'm actually going to open up the chat now. I do have some questions, just give me a sec, that were asked during your presentation. I'm going to try to flag the ones that I suspect have the most range. So one question that came from us just a few moments ago is, what is the best advice you can give to those who want to start their own business?
The best advice to those folks that want to start their own business, I would say probably find a mentor. Find someone that has started either a very similar business, or I guess just any business, but really ideally someone that started a similar business that will help you sort of learn and understand some of the nuances and some of those early experiences. It's great. It's great when you can find someone that has a similar path. You're never going to find someone that has an identical path, because obviously, along every person's path, you make mistakes. And when you can learn from someone else's mistakes versus making those mistakes yourselves, you speed up the path to being successful. So I would say, starting a business, it's so much easier to do today, I feel, especially with the internet, than it was, back in the day. When I started, so, with the internet, you got an audience. With social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you've got, immediate viewership, immediate folks, that you can market to with really almost no money whatsoever, right? If you've got a product that's worth marketing. You can do a viral TikTok video, and if like I said, if it goes viral, you got 1 million followers overnight. So there was nothing like that when I was growing up. So I would encourage you to find a mentor, again, someone that's in that particular profession or maybe a very similar profession. Meet with them on a weekly or even monthly or even bi-monthly basis, and again, try to learn from them. The mistakes maybe that they made, and take any advice maybe that they have for you. I think you'll find so many people as they get older, and I consider myself an old person at this point. We want to do nothing more than help those folks that are coming up behind us. And so I think you'll, again, you find the right mentor, you're going to find someone that's going to bring you right along the way with you and be there to help you the entire path.
Yeah, so we're getting a flood of questions. So I'm going to try to flag a few that I think have a lot of that are just compelling in a unique sort of way. And then, of course, you can see the chat now. If there's any questions you want to tackle, feel free to. So the one that I caught real quick is, how do you choose to divide your time between the things that you value? What if, hypothetically, a client scheduled a time for a meeting that is at the same time that you would need to do something at church? Would you choose the client or the church?
It depends. So, that's a good question, especially for me. I've never taken a formal vacation day in 15 years. So I work a lot of evenings. I work a lot of weekends. I'm basically available 24/7, 365 for pretty much every client I have. If it was a situation like that, however, obviously, if it is a pressing, we talk about putting out fires, in my industry, if it's something that, putting out a fire where, a client, maybe there was an accident at a client's business, right? Or there's something bad in the press that's come forward, or maybe there's a legislative action that's taking place in a committee meeting that's at 8 o'clock on a Friday evening. Obviously, I would prioritize those because those are important, certainly from a business standpoint, for me to be there for those clients when it is they need me. If there's a situation where they need me, if it's just sort of a regular meeting, or we're discussing something that we've got 6, 8, 10 months before we need to make a final decision or final product or something like that, I'm certainly, again, if it's a Sunday morning, right, and I'm on my way to church or something, I'm going to prioritize, that a little bit over. I think it depends on the situation, depends on the ask, and certainly depends on the timing to a degree. But I would defer in any sort of a pressing situation, emergency situation. I would defer to my client.
Awesome. And so another one just came up that's kind of a follow-up. Again, if there's questions you see in the chat that you want to tackle, definitely go for it. I'm just flagging a few that I think kind of play off of each other. So another student just asked, if you don't take vacation days, then how do you balance work with your personal life? Or do you have to give up aspects of your personal life to be successful in your job?
No. Don't construe that for, I just went on a 7-day vacation to Cabo San Lucas to Mexico, right? I just bring my phone with me and I answer emails whenever I get them, right? So it's not that I'm necessarily, not taking vacations. It's just, I know that I am always going to be available. And again, that is bad in a sense. I have just had my first child. I've got a 16-month-old. And one of the things that I am struggling to do, but it is at the forefront of my mind, is to not be on my phone when I'm with my child. Because, I just don't want, her to see me, all the time on my phone, nor do I want my attention to be diverted from, my playtime with her or the time that I have with her. So with that, I would say that I'm available 24/7, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily working 24/7, right? I mean, this afternoon I might be done at 2:30 today. I might go mow my lawn, right? So it's not like I'm working 110 hours a week. Some weeks I work, well over 40 hours, 60 hours, 70, 80 hours, but there's also other weeks I may only work like 20 or so. So, for instance, the legislative at the congressional level, Congress goes on a recess the whole month of August. So a lot of times, August at the federal level is a very slow month for us because everyone's out in their district, they're back in their states, back in their congressional districts, touring businesses and doing the such. So that's kind of a month that we really get to sort of fall back on. Not to say I wouldn't have something maybe to do that month at the local level or at the state level, but it ebbs and flows. So I would say a larger point I would say is, gosh, by having your own business, you get to set your own schedule. So in that sense, it's great. If I want to not schedule any meetings on a Friday afternoon, on a Wednesday afternoon, on a Tuesday morning, on a Monday morning, I can certainly do that and have the autonomy to do that. So in that sense, it's really good versus having to go into an office 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. The great thing about that is when you leave on Friday, you're done until Monday morning, right? With a lot of jobs. I know the teachers there are probably shaking their heads because they are going home to grade papers all weekend. Certainly there's jobs where you take work home with you. So.
Yeah. So real quick, what I'm going to do going forward now, because we do have 15 minutes left, is just let you scroll through the questions and answer the ones that you want to answer.
Yeah, I'll burn
there are a lot of great ones.
Yeah, I'll burn through as many as I can. So I'm going back up to the top here real quick.
Okay. And while he's scrolling to see which questions he likes, one thing I do want to flag for the students that are here and for those that watch the recording, a key takeaway that I personally grabbed from Mr. West is you pick your poison. The career you choose will shape the freedom you have. So, for example, I have a couple of frat brothers, who are high-ranking engineers and medium-ranking engineers at Lockheed Martin, right? They work a 4-day, 10-hour work week, and then they get 3 days off. But unlike West, they are tethered to that. They literally have to be at the facility doing the work, and they're really tracked, right? So they get paid an incredible amount of money, but they have picked the poison that they're prepared to sacrifice a lot of flexibility and freedom because they get those 3 days off and they get a lot of money. So just keep that in mind, guys, as you're hearing Mr. West's story and as you hear other guest speakers and as you talk to your mentors, everyone picks their poison on what they're going to sacrifice professionally and personally. And that hopefully will shape what career you choose based on those core values you have. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking. Yeah. This is West's time. And let him answer some more questions.
So I'll try to do them all. So I chose Arizona, going out to the state of Arizona. My brother had gone out there for his master's degree to the University of Arizona. I went out there and visited him. I'm going to talk kind of quick because I want to try to get through every question. So I'd gone out there to visit him and just thought it was absolutely beautiful out there. So I ended up going to a junior college there. And then my brother and I had this huge rivalry. I was never going to go to the University of Arizona. So I went to Arizona State, which is the big in-state rivalry. Heck of a lot better in football, go Devils, than the University of Arizona. No pity for the kitty. How do you convince people to do things beyond just making it seem beneficial to them? I mean, sometimes you don't. I mean, sometimes you can't. Sometimes there's no convincing of an individual, but a lot of time, every time, you're always going to have, detractors or an opposition. It's very rare. I mean, again, just look at Congress. I mean, right? These guys vote party line 99% of the time. It's very hard to get, folks to sort of break away from either a party or on a particular issue. So, I mean, some folks you just have to realize you're just not going to convince them. And there's not necessarily, in what I do, it's not necessarily beneficial to them, but be beneficial to their constituents. That's the more important thing. So I'm not necessarily concerned about any benefit to them, the individual. I'm talking about how the benefit is to their constituents back either in their congressional district or back in their board of supervisors district or city council district. This is why it's good. It's either going to create more jobs, right? It's either going to create more revenue, which allows them to build more roads, build more schools, renovate old schools. So, you sort of find, increased salaries for police, fire and rescue. There's all sorts of ways that, again, that's beneficial, but beneficial again to the constituents. I could give a care less about the individual congressman or the individual board member or city council member. I'm caring more about why this is good for them and the district and the people that they represent. I chose political science because it's a lot more interesting than history. History turned pretty boring for me. History is the past. Political science is sort of current and going forward, being in the day, sort of in the moment. So that's why I chose that. My greatest fear and how do I manage fear? I don't necessarily think I have a fear, but I would, my greatest fear is, gosh, not living to see my daughter get married. Is that, I don't know if that's too personal or not, but, I'd say that's probably my biggest fear is, dying in a car wreck or of cancer or something like that, before I get to see, her become an adult. Let's see. How do you choose to divide your time between things that you value? I think I answered that one already. Do you think lobbyists have too much power in government? No, I think that's a complete sort of misnomer, if you will. So think about it this way. I'll give you an example. In Virginia, for where I do some state lobbying work, Virginia's state legislature meets for 2 months. They only meet Monday through Friday. They don't meet on weekends. So they essentially meet for 20 days in January, 20 days in February, 40 days. Over those 40 days, they review 6,000 bills, right? Some of these bills are a page. Some of these bills are 100 pages long. 6,000 bills in 40 days. If you just do that simple math, right, it's impossible for them to know every single bill, every single language, what a bill does, who it impacts, the positive things it does, the negative things it does, what it's trying to correct or fix, the solution, the problem it's trying to solve, whatever. They don't have time to read all 6,000 of those bills. All a lobbyist does, we're very much like a teacher, is we come in and say, hey, here's this bill, this is what it does, and this is how my client is going to be impacted. Not to say they're not going to meet with 100 other lobbyists representing 100 other clients who are going to tell them 100 other different ways in which that particular piece of legislation is going to impact, again, either their association, themselves individually, whoever it may be. So I don't think lobbyists really have any power necessarily in government. We're more or less educators for the most part. There's no one that I know I can walk in and convince to do something that in its face is completely disadvantageous to them or their constituents. Again, I think it's kind of a misnomer, as far as what power maybe lobbyists, yield. Just like I think it's, also kind of a misnomer that they're up there handing out checks all the time. Not to say they don't give these guys checks, but to think that check buys them anything. I mean, gosh, guys, I can give you 100 names of individuals that my clients have given money to that went and turned and voted against what it was I was in there pitching. So again, that doesn't guarantee anything. How do you go about networking with people without making them feel as if the relationship is superficial? Man, that's a question from a high school kid. That's a heck of a great question. I think it depends on who you're networking with, right? I mean, what's sort of the commonality, that's in there. I would imagine that you're probably going to be networking with groups of folks that you already have something in common with, be it the profession you want to go into, or maybe where you're from, or maybe, whatever it might be. So I imagine that they wouldn't necessarily see it as being superficial. I mean, you're going to pick up pretty quickly if a person is A, interested, or B, if they have any value to you. And if they don't have either of them, if they're not interesting and they don't have no value to you, then you yourself are probably going to want to move on. How do you feel when people accuse you of paying off people? Yeah, I mean, it just sort of is what it is. I don't know how to prove an untruth, but that is certainly something you have to do. It really makes no difference whatsoever. When I started out in this industry, oh my God, I was burning through cash thinking that that's the way it did get done, and boy, did I find out really quick that it's not. Really, I'll tell you, and if this is true, going to be true in life. I thought that I had to attend all these different fundraisers and all these different meetings. And when I first became a registered lobbyist, I thought I had to be everywhere, pay to see all these guys, go to all these fundraisers and all this stuff. And I thought that would make me close with them. That would make them trust me. That would make them, listen more to what I had to say. And boy, was that a big lesson there you go. I'm sharing you a big mistake that I made, a big lesson that I had to learn. What really is beneficial is time. When you're around for 15 years, and when I've walked in and I've said to someone, 100 times now at this point, that this is how a particular bill is going to impact your constituents, and I've been honest and correct with them each and every time, that helps me the 101st time that I go in there and the 102nd time that I go in there. If I walked into this individual's office and told them, promised them something was going to happen, and the exact opposite occurred, they're never going to listen to me again. They're never going to believe another word that I say. So it doesn't matter how much money I hand to them. They know that I can't be trusted. So your word and having that trust factor, and again, having that experience, building that bridge, right, plank by plank, instilling in them that, hey, look, what you're telling them is true and you can be trusted, man, that supersedes any amount of cash or donation that you can give anyone and an elected official. What is the process of your thinking, and how do you think of situations? Not sure I necessarily understand that particular question. I'll say, there's a couple different ways in which you can attack things, right? There are people that work really slow. There are people that work really fast and make maybe some mistakes. That was me. And then there are people that have this, God, blessed ability to work fast and make no mistakes whatsoever. So the type of student I was in high school, I always wanted to be the first kid to turn my test in. Now, I'd never get 100. I might get, like a B+ or something like that on the test. But in life, how that is translated now to my professional career, if I have a deadline of putting together a land use plan or a marketing plan for a client that's due Friday, I get that to them on Wednesday. And that affords us 48 hours to go back and forth for them to say, hey, I like this, I don't like this, let's tweak this, let's edit this. And therefore, when I do turn that product in on Friday at that deadline, we've already had the opportunity to go back and forth and sort of compromise maybe on some issues or so. So that's how me as a student, always wanting to be first and always wanting to turn in my projects quicker, my tests quicker, et cetera, has really translated almost directly into my professional career. I still work quick, I still work fast, I still get things done way ahead of deadlines, but there's also now an ability to go back and revise, right? It'd be great if you turned your test in early in your science class and your teacher said, hey, you got to the end of class, and he hands it back to you and says, hey, think about question 4 and 6. You might be wrong, right? But obviously, high school doesn't work that way. Are there networking events are actually good ideas? How do you make things awkward for people? Or networking for actually good. Networking events are good ideas, and I would encourage you guys, and gosh, organizations, even right there in school, if there's like a Rotaract club, your FFA, your FBLA, right, your DECA club, your Key club, all those clubs, a lot of them are tied to adult organizations. Rotaract's tied to Rotary clubs. Key clubs are tied to Kiwanis clubs, right? FFA, I think, tied to Farm Bureau, right? Those are great organizations right now for you all to get in. One, you're in those organizations with your peers or your same age, but they also give you a direct link to a mentor, an adult, someone that's already in that profession, who will gladly, again, sit down with you, talk with you, take you to lunch, to answer questions you might have about their particular profession, their career, their day-to-day operations, whatever it is, what they do. How much does the average lobbyist make? I don't think there necessarily is an average. You got some good lobbyists and you got some bad lobbyists. I'll share this. A contract typically is like $7,500 a month. I'd say that's kind of a general rate. Now, if I have, I've got a firm that I subcontract for a lot. They have Saudi Arabia as a client. Saudi Arabia pays them $2.5 million a month. So, it varies wildly, right? From client to client. I have some clients that pay $15,000 a month, right? $25,000 a month. You've got, other projects that'll come to you that are just like $2,500 for, a month. Again, depends on what the ask is. If it's a long-term client, you're going to take less money. If it's a shorter-term client, right? If they've got a big problem and it's next week is the deadline, that the problem is that the boat, let's say, is going to be taken, you're going to charge a lot more for that because, again, it's a very short term and you got to compact a lot of work into that short period of time. But gosh, an average lobbyist makes, I'm not sure if there is an exact price you could put on that. Don't take vacation, chose Arizona State University. See, at one point, did you ever want to give up your path? What motivated you back in your work hard? Can you speak about that moment? I don't think I've ever wanted to, gosh, once you start working for yourself, you never want to work for anybody else again. I'll just share that. Let me do like a couple of more. I don't know. Are we coming up on a time limit here?
My mic was off. So we are actually wrapping up now with in the last couple of minutes. I noticed Chancellor Gerard gave a thumbs up. Was that to say we should probably close up shop, or do you want us to tackle a couple more? Oh, I think he said two more. So yeah, if there's two more that you want to ask, we'll answer real quick. At that point, we can wrap up from there.
Yeah, did I ever get to see a president in an interview? Yes. So I've been to the White House a number of different times. So we do a bipartisan. We are a bipartisan firm, as I mentioned. I do the Republican side of the aisle. My colleague does the Democratic side of the aisle. So I had an opportunity to meet Donald Trump. I've had an opportunity to meet George Bush. I actually worked for George W. Bush on his particular campaign. I got to meet him a number of times in Florida. I've got pictures of all those here in my office. Did your degree actually help your career? Gosh, maybe. I would say, I mean, college again, I went to class and didn't necessarily apply myself a ton. I'm sure there's folks that would say that it did. Certainly it's a piece of paper that a lot of people value. You can't really get past that. Not to say that, gosh, getting a technical job, is you can come right out of school. My wife works for BNSF Radio or BNSF Railroad. You can come right out of high school, 18 years old, make $125,000 at BNSF, right? So there's a career path for some of you folks right there if you really want it. And they're hiring 600 people like right now. So any of you seniors that are graduating in May or June, there's a 6-figure job for you waiting for you. So do not discount the technical schools at all. I would also say I'll end it on this. Can I end it on? Ended on my biggest regret, which I don't think anybody asked. My biggest regret is I didn't serve in the military. That's my biggest regret. I wish if I could go back, I would have done 2 years in the military. And something, again, I'll end on this final point. Our military is fought by a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds, which I can say those are kids because they are kids. Congress, if you go up on Capitol Hill, folks, every one of those congressional offices is being run by a 21 to 25-year-old kid. Every single office. If the office has 30 employees, I guarantee you 25 of them are under the age of 25. So, these opportunities are both, great and immediate for you all that are coming out of high school. Again, my regret's not going in the military, but understand that this country is both run and this country is defended by 20-somethings, which I don't think anyone really out there necessarily realizes. And it's incredible that's true. So the responsibilities that you guys can hold, I mean, very, very early on in your career are astronomical if you take either one of those two particular career paths.
That's a heck of a way to close it. I know you probably can't hear it, but I suspect some students are probably clapping for your presentation. Real quick, I'm going to put in the chat for everyone. The program has already started, but for any students that have not had an opportunity to submit their application to join the Parchment program, I would strongly encourage you to do that today. Our program actually just secured a partnership with A&M where we now have funds to help some of you start your own businesses. So that's another incentive for those of you that are entrepreneurial and in high school. Again, thank you, Chris West, for sharing so much of your time. It really is a big deal. Once the session is finished recording, we'll definitely upload it and share it with the faculty, staff, and students at our partner institutions. And I would encourage you guys to rewatch and listen carefully. One thing I've learned in my very short time is that wisdom has a way of repeating itself in different languages. So if you go to TILBM's website and listen to our guest speakers from last year and our guest speaker from last week, and then Chris West, you're going to probably start picking up, there's some commonalities. All of these folks are incredibly successful and have come from very unique, diverse backgrounds. And yet there is commonalities in how some of them have got where they've gotten. And if you do your research into their stories, that might really give you an edge as you figure out your place here in Texas or wherever you end up going. So anyway, I don't want to rant too much. Thank you again, Mr. West, for sharing your time with everyone. It really is cool to have you here, and we really do appreciate and value the time and wisdom you shared.
Thank you all. Hopefully there was some value in that for everyone. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, in that case, we'll close it up from now.